Hi, this is Papa with Parodu Marketing. Today we'll be looking at solving quadratic equations. What, who, why, when, where, and how many methods are there to solve quadratic equations? Now, firstly, I've written all the methods down. What I'll do is I'll just simply highlight the methods as you're looking at them. So by factorization, solving quadratic equations by factorization, that's number one. That's what we'll look at first. Now, you've done this in previous grades, by the way. Solution also by completing the square. You've also done this in grade 10. Solution by quadratic formula. Also, you started with the solution by quadratic formula in grade 10. Lastly, last but not least, you will find the equations when you know its roots. So there is a solution where finding an equation when you know its roots. Now we'll look at each of these methods individually. So without wasting any of your time, let's just get straight down to business. So solving equations through solution by factorization, right? So this solving quadratic by factorization would mean that you would then have to use properties such as your distributive properties, where when you do have an equation such as the one that you are looking at, where there's an x bracket x minus 3 close bracket equals to 10. So I always say solution at the end because I do provide solutions. However, if you want a solutions to this, you can always send me an email, WhatsApp, or even comment on our YouTube channel, and then we'll be able to answer any questions you might have. So for this, for example, you then use the distributive property, right? So you calculate that by that, that by that. So, and then you get your answer. Now, we can do this without even trying, right? So this is x squared, this is negative 3x, right? So when you transpose the 10, remember what is 10? 10 is 2 times 5. So 2 times 5 will be the factors that you need to be able to factorize. So this definitely can factor. So we are good with that. So now you must solve x squared minus 2x plus 1 on your own. So after having done that, please also note that we have solving fractions that lead to quadratic equations. So these type of fractions, they lead to quadratic. So you must know also this as well as this method here. So for this one, you simply cross multiply, right? For this one, you use the LCD, lowest common denominator. So you need to flatten everything here so that it's easier to simplify. So now let's carry on to the next page. We have now looked at solving quadratic equations by factorization, which is done. Now once you know this, you will then have to go on to the next part of the session, where you also need to know where to, in this case we said solution by the quadratic formula. So we all know the quadratic formula, right? The quadratic formula, it's always given in your exam sheet. It's at the back of it. It's quite long. X is equals to negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2a. So that's your quadratic formula. So always remember, if you encounter an equation where you cannot factorize, using the quadratic formula can always work for you. So using the quadratic formula is always the last resort, or for me anyway, but there are 4 ways, remember, of solving the quadratic equation. So you don't need to factor or factorize. You can always use the quadratic formula. So using this would mean that you using the quadratic but no solutions. If you get a no solution, it's possible to get a solution where there is no solution. So always remember it. But this is, remember, part of theory. We're just learning the theory side of solving quadratic equations. We are going to look at these topics individually in more details in the next few chapters that are going to follow up to this. Now, for now, we'll also look at finding an equation when you know its roots. Now here, when you know the roots, there's several roots. There's several roots that you would know. So when the roots are equal, that is when the triangle is equals to naught. If the triangle is equals to naught, then the roots are equal, right? And from the formula, remember, finding an equation when you know its roots. From the formula, these are given by, let's do this. These are given by x minus b over 2a, right? Always remember that. So always note that there are 3. Finding an equation when you know its roots, there are 3 methods when you know the roots. So the roots could be equal roots, and you could have unequal roots. So if you have equal roots, it stands to reason that you will have unequal roots. Now, when you have unequal roots, that's where the triangle is greater than 0, right? So the triangle is greater than 0. Now there will be 2 unequal roots. So you need to always remember that there'll always be 2 unequal roots if the triangle is greater than 0, right? The roots of the f of x. So there will be 2 unequal roots, right? So the roots of the f of x are rational if, so they'll be rational or if the triangle is a perfect square. So remember that they will be rational if the triangle is a perfect square, a number which is the square of a rational number. So, and they will be irrational if it's not a perfect square, right? Remember, what are your real numbers? Real numbers are made up of 2 types of numbers, which is your rational and irrational. Since in this case, the square root of the triangle is rational, otherwise, if the triangle is not a perfect square, if it's not a perfect square, remember it, then the roots are irrational, right? So basically you do find the roots either way. the roots will either be rational or irrational. Now, hopefully everybody understands that. Let's go now to our last but not least, imaginary roots. So with imaginary roots, that's where now your triangle is less than 0. So when your triangle is less than 0, we say that these are imaginary roots. And we'll look at the definition in more detail. Let me just do this. So if your triangle is less than 0, then the solution to contain the square root of a negative number, or then the solution to contains the square root of a negative number, and therefore there are no real solutions. So in the square root, if you have a negative number, there are no real solutions. You put it in your calculator and check. We therefore say that the roots of the f of x are imaginary, right? The graph of the function f of x does not intersect the x-axis. So now you look at also, lastly, quadratic inequalities. Now for quadratic inequalities, solve the inequality 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 greater than or equals to 0, and interpret the solution graphically. Find all the solutions to the inequalities. X squared minus 5x plus 6 is less than or equals to, it's greater than or equals to 0. And also solve the quadratic inequalities of negative x squared minus 3x plus 5 is greater than 0. And then look at nonlinear inequality with the variable in the denominator, right? So these are your questions. You should, if you are struggling to solve these quadratic inequalities, please send us a question or send us a comment on our YouTube channel, and then we can do these questions are basically easy, but if you are struggling, please get a hold of us so that we can be able to assist you properly. For now, I'd like to thank you for watching our channel, and please do have a wonderful day. Follow, subscribe, like, and ensure that you practice your math every day, because practice makes perfect.